Hey guys, today I'm going to be covering the Redshift Curvature node. And the Redshift Curvature node is kind of a utility node. It lets you apply changes to the convex or concave surfaces of objects. And so, for example, if you needed to add grit into like the concave sections of the shader ball, and some people use the Ambient Occlusion node to do something similar. And the cool thing about the curvature node is it lets you do that in these kind of areas and also on the convex surfaces, like the outside right here, these corners and stuff. And so it's really great utility node to add wear and tear and stuff like that, procedural noise basically, to your shaders. And it's a little superior to the ambient occlusion. And so I'm going to go over what it does and how to use it and stuff. And this will be probably a little shorter of a tutorial since it's really quick, kind of just how to use the node. And so right now we just got a white Redshift material, so let's move this out of the way for now. And we'll go into the hypershade. And so let's actually make this black just so we can see it better once we actually start working on it. And if you start typing curve, you'll get the Redshift Curvature node. So this node has a couple inputs, outputs, and a couple settings. Normally when you click on it, it just comes with this. So either convex or concave, and the radius, so like how far it'll spread, and the samples. And then you have remap options, and this lets you do different things like remap the strength and stuff. And I'll be using contrast actually. And so how do we go around to using this? So for our example, I'm going to add a little damage and grit to this shader ball using the curvature node, so everything procedural. And basically we're going to start off with just the base material. So right now, if we load up the IPR, we've got this black. I chose black just because it's going to be easier to see once we actually start working on it. And this is just our black material, our base Redshift material. So we're going to make another Redshift material. And this one will be chrome. So we'll just use the preset for aluminum or something. And what we want basically is, let's say this got damaged and we want the metal underneath to show through this black paint or something. So we're going to layer up both of these materials using the blender. And so if you get the Redshift material blender, this node lets you layer up to 7 materials, and 6 on top of your base. And so we're going to make the chrome material our base, and we're going to connect that to our shader group for our ball. And so right now what we have is basically just this chrome ball now. So we want to layer on top of this that black paint thing we had as a coat. So we're going to put that as layer 1. And so you have this blend color slider. Right now at black it means it's completely off. The opacity's, there. And then white means it's turned on. And you could actually input textures and do all kinds of other neat stuff with this, but we're gonna use the curvature node for our purposes. And so now that we have this curvature node, let's organize this a little bit. How do we get this to feed information into the opacity slot for our first layer of black material? And so there's several ways you could do this. For our purposes, we're going to use a ramp. And the reason we're going to use a ramp is because it gives us a little more control of how it applies it. So we're going to get our output, and we're going to feed it into the V of the ramp. And then our out color is going to go into our blend color. So blend color 1. Now that we do that, you might be wondering, oh, okay, I don't really see anything going on. And the reason is actually that we have to reverse this. And so let's make a reverse node and pipe that into the input, and then pipe this out into V. So now that we've got that going, now we have the convex on activated, and so it's applying, and the mask is then feeding into our black material, and it's cutting out the convex surfaces. And so if we were to switch this to concave, for example, we would get it in the concave areas. So like, let's zoom in here. You can see it. So like right here, we're getting it in the concave areas. So the concave is great if you're trying to add like dirt and stuff that's collecting in these little areas. And convex is great if you're adding scratches and damage on curved corners and stuff like that. So let's zoom out of this. And now that we've got that going, right now it's very clean. So to add a little noise to the convex scratches that we're going to add, we're going to feed this a noise. So we'll use a texture noise. And with this, we could then tell the remap section of contrast, and we could feed it into this contrast slot. And so let's put that into contrast value. And so it might not look like it changed much, but if you zoom in here, now we're getting some like variation. And so this could be adjusted to your, however you feel like using it with the noise node. And you can use different noise nodes, Brownian, stuff like that, but we're going to just use the good old generic noise. So we'll switch to Perlin, and let's I don't know, increase the frequency maybe, get a little more variation in there, increase the depth, see if we drop the amplitude. Let's keep the amplitude high, and let's increase the frequency ratio. Okay, so now if we look around, we're getting like variation, like parts that aren't as beat up, some parts are a little more beat up, etc., etc. And so now that we have the curvature node, we can increase or decrease this radius. So let's, I don't know, if you want, try 1 or go crazy and try 5. And see, it's spreading it out. But this isn't the only thing that's controlling that. Actually, our ramp node is controlling this also. So if we push this black in, you see, it gives us a little more control. That's why now we can really clip it so it's subtle, or move this back more. And the ability to do this adds just a little more control. And so we'll do something like this. And let's increase the spread a little. And so now we've got this cool, it looks like wear and tear, like it's been dropped and it's gotten some scratches and stuff. And obviously we could keep layering stuff onto this. So with this material blender, we could layer more things on top of it. And I'll actually layer some dirt on it right now using the same technique, except instead of convex, now we'll be using concave. And so on the material here, we could, add some bump maps and, get creative and add a lot of other neat stuff to this. But for now we've got our procedural scratches. If you zoom in, let's blow this up so you can see we got procedural noise going on these edges for wear and tear. And now let's add some grit, some dirt into the concave areas like these areas. And so other people use ambient occlusion nodes to do that, but you do the same thing with this setup. And so we'll actually duplicate this because why not? And let's duplicate that entire setup, and only thing we'll change is we'll just use concave instead. And so now that we've pasted this in, and we'll adjust the ramp and stuff to our liking. Let's make another Redshift material, and we'll call this dirt, and we'll make this like a brownish kind of color or something, and we'll get rid of reflectance, the reflection, and add a little roughness. And so now we'll layer that as layer number 2. So now we got layer number 2 going, and we're gonna put in the copied little network we had into there. And so right now it's way too strong, as you can see. And the reason that it's doing this, it's taking over, is probably a ramp, but let's check. Spread this out. Nope, it ain't the ramp. Is the radius too high? 0.001. Nope, it ain't the radius. So what's causing this? It's the reverse node. And so if we don't reverse this and we actually just feed that in directly, let's delete that. And we zoom in, and let's actually adjust this ramp. See if we can get some zoom. And let's see. It's kind of hard to tell, actually. Let's use a really bright color for now, just for debugging purposes, really, so you can see what's going on. And let's unhook that. Okay, so there we go. It's in there, it's just bugging out. And so let's adjust our ramp. Let's go this way. Adjust our radius to something like, whoa, that's way too much. Let's try 3. It's still a little too much. 5. 2. And it looks like the model actually that I'm doing this testing on is bugging out. So might be the model being weird that's causing this. Let's reverse these. Okay. And it looks like, yeah, the model's probably got some issues. You live and you learn. Yeah, looks like the oh, actually there it is. Yeah, it's the contrast. My mistake. And so the reason that it was doing all that is because the contrast was, I forgot to set this back to normal after I unplugged the noise. And so now we've got the dirt showing up, and we're using green just because, like I said, it's a little easier to see this while we adjust different settings. And so let's increase the radius spread. Let's try 2. And let's push this in a little more. So, okay, that's cool. Now let's reintroduce the noise, but let's use let's adjust this actually, because let's just make a new one. And because the scales are different, and so let's just try a new noise. And again, we'll feed this into the contrast value. And so, okay, cool. So now we're back on track. And so if you zoom in here, let's actually literally zoom in to our object. We've got, as expected, our noise variations. So let's now tweak the noise. Let's go with some Perlin. Let's increase the frequency a little bit. And yeah, that looks cool. That's good enough. And so we could spread this out more. Could move the bias back and forth, so like the bias basically will spread it across the whole thing. And so let's do this. Zoom out. And if we move the bias now, let's slide it out one way. See, it kind of just starts pushing the value further out. And so if we, continue to do this all the way, it covers the whole thing. And so, and if you do it the opposite, it gets rid of it. So let's actually do something like that. So we get, a nice little bit of dirt collecting under there. And you could, same thing with the clamping and all that. It just either adds more of it or gets rid of more of the amount you have. So see, this is way too much because I'm increasing the minimum. If you drop the max, it gets rid of it. And so that's just clamping the values that are being outputted. And okay, this is cool. And actually, we could do that also with the other one. So let's say we wanted to add some damage to the outside. Let's go to the original curvature node, and let's tweak the bias a little bit forward. And see, it's starting to do stuff out here, and but now it's really strong on the edges. And so you could tweak the ramp, for example, to adjust for that. Move this back. You see, and so now now it's all over the place. Now it's way too strong, and that's because of the bias. So let's drop the bias a little. And so now we've got some damage. Let's clip that in just a tad. And so if we zoom in here, let's check it out. Now it's like there's a little bit of wear and tear, not only on the edges. The edges are where it's concentrated at, but now it's kind of all across the surface. And so now that we've got this, let's turn that color into actual dirt, something brown. Let's go with something a little lighter, less saturated. And let's actually spread that out over the surface a little more too. So let's increase the bias and tweak the ramp. Let's push that ramp down. Let's spread this to 3. And maybe push the gain up a little bit. A little more bias. No, that's too much. Yeah, that's fine. Let's just keep it somewhere near where we had it. And so this basically lets us, keep layering stuff up. So we can layer more damage, and then eventually on each individual shader you can go in there and add bump, and you could use these also to feed the bump. So let's actually try that right now. If we use the bump input, see, and so now we're actually even getting bump on the surface. So the curvature node can be used to feed different stuff, not just masks and things like that. You could use bump or the reflection surface. So like, let's say we don't want it to be, well, no, because we actually want both surfaces to be reflective. Just the chrome's just a little stronger. But yeah, you get the idea. You could do lots of cool stuff with it. And so let's go with the final render right now. Let's center this out. Move this out of the way. Let's pause the IPR. Go for full res. Blow it up. And go with the final render. And see how it looks. And so it's looking pretty cool. Yeah, so you see we got all this variation. And this is all caused, this is the noise that we applied spreading away from the curvature because of the bias that we included. And so then we also got a little bit of dirt collecting in the convex regions, so like right here. And I mean, you could tweak the parameters up or down, however you feel works best. And so let's just increase the exposure so you can see it better. And so yeah, if you look in there, it's in there. The scratches on the outside, some surface changes and stuff. So you can do really cool stuff with it. And so again, that's the curvature node. And by the way, you don't have to use a reverse node. I just used it, but another way to reverse it if you're using a ramp. But if you're not using a ramp, you do need the reverse node. But if you're using just a ramp to pipe it in to feed to the material blender or whatever else you're feeding it into, you could just flip the black and the white side so one side goes the other side, and it'll essentially reverse it. So like if I start an IPR and if I move this to this side, the exact opposite's happening, And so, but yeah, I mean, it's a good idea to be using the reverse node, just for workflow purposes. And so yeah, that's basically what you can do with the curvature node. You could feed it into masks for your material blender to add scratches or layer up materials. You could feed it into bump. You could feed it into reflection, roughness. You can do a lot of really cool stuff with it. It's pretty powerful of a node. And so yeah, there you go, guys. The Redshift Curvature Node.